Welcome to Speaking Cinema, Serious Movie Jibber Jabber, a movie podcast coming to you live from the 1940s MGM soundstage here in Hollywood, California. 1940, polio everywhere.
You got it in your soup.
Follow us on social media at Speaking Cinema. Listen to us Jibber Jabber about a movie before and after seeing it every single Monday on your local podcatcher. I am your host, Saxophone Tutor, Mr. Jibber Jabber. With me today, as always, that old singing softy himself, Blue-Eyed Kev.
That's me. I'm just an old softy.
We are in the dessert course here on our Director's Buffet. The last, hopefully, tasty dish. We've been looking at Martin Scorsese for the last 7 weeks, Kev.
Yes, we have.
7 weeks, and we're at the ultimate finale.
Been a big meal. It's Director Buffet.
do we think that what I mean, maybe it's Scorsese just because all of his movies are long and plotless, but it made me question the buffet as a concept. You know what I mean?
Did I break you? Did I finally break you?
But this presumptuous to think that you broke me. But you know, perhaps with a different director, you know, it would feel different. The Spielberg one, I think I was burnt out on him, but I think I was eager to get other stuff done. I don't know. You know what I mean? Also, historically with Scorsese, we'll see about today, and with Spielberg, not my cup of tea directors.
All right. You get to pick next time.
You're goddamn right I do.
I was thinking about one the other day that could potentially be interesting. Catherine Bigelow.
Interesting.
Very diverse filmography.
I would like a diverse pick, and I would like a diverse filmography, so that perhaps would work.
Yeah. And then we can do Point Break. That would be great.
Oh boy.
Two Utah. Two.
To get back to what we're talking about, let's explore a quote from old Marty Scorsese. Cinema is a matter of what's in the frame and what's out. Kev, that's a quote from Marty. I feel like if I said that or if you said that, film people would be like, shut up. But because he says it, it's the truth. I happen to agree with him, right?
I completely agree. It only needs to look good in those four walls.
Well, and also, though, there is a power to what is not shown as much as there is to, not maybe as much as there is shown, but, you know, you have to also look at what's not being shown. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. You know, we don't see the actual rape in Cape Fear, but by God, we know it was terrible.
Right.
We see a lot of the preamble to it, but by God, we know it sucked.
Mm-hmm.
And it tells us everything we need to know about that character. In fact, we see it from a window outside, and that's all we need to see.
Indeed. But they've shown enough to make it brutal. That was Cape Fear. That was last week's episode. Go back and listen to that if you haven't. But this week, we're wrapping things up. The war was over, and the world was falling in love again. 1977's New York, New York, starring who else? Robert De Niro
Bobby D.
and Liza Minnelli. Written by Martin and Eric Mac Ranch? Or is it Ranch?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Anyways, music by John Ratner and Fred Ebb. Produced and distributed by United Artists. Although, who's putting it out today? Because that company doesn't exist. We'll find out.
Partially owned by MGM at the time.
At the time?
I believe so.
I do. I have heard Hollywood stories of apparently, like, in that way that, like, business money doesn't make sense to us. You know, like, they bought and sold the library a couple of times to make money. And, like, I'm not really sure how that... If you sell something just to buy it back for hire, I don't know how that makes you money, but sure. You know what I mean? Or is it like you sell it, you get a bunch of money, and then you buy it back, and then you sell it, you start the transactional DVD, Blu-ray, digital HD process? I don't really understand that. But does that get you, by selling it and then buying it back, does that get you out of deals that you had with people? I don't really understand. MGM. It's a complicated company.
Yes, it is.
If you're not familiar, on VJ Day in New York, a saxophonist meets and falls in love with a pop singer, but their relationship grows complicated when their careers take different turns. Filming took place on the soundstages at MGM, where many a golden age Hollywood musical was filmed. Liza Minnelli's mom, Judy Garland. Did you know that?
Yes, I did.
Emily told me that when we when I told her we're gonna do this, and I was like, oh really?
Yep. Her dad is Vincent Minnelli or Vicente Minnelli. I'm not sure how to say it, but he was a famous singer.
Indeed. So Judy Garland had occupied many of these stages. Liza claimed to feel her spirit during filming. Also struck up a romantic relationship with both De Niro and Scorsese during the shoot. I'm not passing any judgment on Liza Minnelli. Take Liza Minnelli out of the situation. Has Martin Scorsese and Robert De Niro had a three-way with some other lady?
Ooh.
You know, we're not no specific names, but with all the coke they were doing, with the power that they had, and the age it was, right? Pre-AIDS, right?
Yeah.
That had to have happened.
I bet it happened. I bet it was before Scorsese was a little more neurotic too. Because I feel like that maybe developed out of the cocaine.
I'm not saying that he enjoyed it either. I'm not saying it was like, dude, we should do this all the time. This was hella fun.
Yeah.
I'm saying it happened one night.
I bet it happened.
Maybe they don't talk about it.
I bet it happened.
All right. It's claimed in the book Easy Riders, Raging Bulls by Peter Biskind. Biskind? That's what it says, right?
Yeah. Whatever's on there is the guy's name.
It's claimed in the book Easy Riders, Raging Bulls that Scorsese was in the throes of drug addiction during this shoot and had no control over the constant dialogue improvisation that he encouraged. Kev, what do you make of that?
Can happen to the best of us. You know, it's you hear stories of those shoots in the 70s that were, they talked about on the shoot of Popeye, they were doing cocaine every other take, like just blasting through it to make Popeye a kids movie of all things.
You gotta get through it somehow.
You know, Apocalypse Now was riddled with, you know, drug addiction and hallucinogenics and a general lack of control over everything that could have gone wrong, did go wrong on that set. Chronicled in a documentary, Heart of Darkness.
Indeed.
Which we should watch sometime.
Indeed.
It's great. It can happen to the best filmmakers, you know. You can, but, you know, neither of us have seen this movie, presumably.
I'm not.
We don't know if it goes off the rails or not. So, you know, for me, I've said it before, Apocalypse Now is my favorite movie of all time. Somehow it all worked, eventually.
Eventually, right?
Sometimes the chaos can bear great fruit. Sometimes it bears just nothing. So, we'll see.
Speaking of not bearing any fruit, this film was a box office failure, making $13 million on a $14 million budget. Sent Scorsese into a deep depression, but the studio did fine because they agreed to share profits on Rocky with MGM because they thought that would be a big bomb and they wanted to hedge the bet. Hollywood accounting, everyone, it's never as simple as you think. For example, on the digital, I know this. I was listening to a podcast, Script Notes, and they're talking about how if a movie bombs, that movie gets put into a package deal with movies that don't bomb to be sold in TV syndication. So you can't buy, you don't just get the Avengers. You got the Avengers and you get 3 other things with it, right? Yeah. So what you really want is the Avengers.
But you get Mr. Megorium's Wonder Emporium too.
Bagoom, baboom, gagoom. So when you're watching FX and you're like, why the fuck are they playing this Bobo movie?
Why is Jumper on right now?
Right.
Which is apparently on all day on FX.
Because they wanted Wolverine.
Yep.
And they got Wolverine, Jumper, Wolverine, X-Men Apocalypse, and X-Men First Class. And it's like, well, we paid for this fucker. We might as well put it on TV, right? Mm-hmm. There you go. So everyone likes to be like, oh, it didn't make movie money in its first weekend. Must not have made any money ever. Not so.
Not true. They will find a way.
And as we've learned here, that's not even necessarily how we're measuring this.
No, exactly. It's like, it doesn't matter how this movie does because we got money from this other thing. So, a little Hollywood Accounting 101 for you, everybody.
There's a few versions of this movie floating around. The one that's readily available and that we're watching is the 163-minute version. I'll bear that because it bears repeating 163 minutes. What a fitting way to end this shit.
Of course.
With a, what is that, 2 hours and 43 minutes? Jesus. As of this recording, this film is available on DVD, no Blu-ray, no digital HD purchase, no streaming. Go fuck yourself. So, there's that. Kev? Have you seen this movie? I have not.
I have not.
I don't think I've even heard of this movie.
I hear about it vaguely, but never talked about in the same way of the Raging Bulls, the Goodfellas, his absolute great works. But people are like, oh, is this Martin Scorsese musical? I was like, oh, that's intriguing that he ever made one. So I'm curious about it.
Mm-hmm. We're no strangers to musicals on this episode. I am no stranger to musicals because friend of the show, Emily, is just she's just an old timey gal, you know, hanging out, loving her music, really into the way they used to do them, you know, fucking, but you know, fucking every studio's putting out 12 musicals a year, so you're getting, you know,
you got Doris Day, you got Judy Garland, you got Elvis in Hawaii, you got everything.
So it begs the question: Gritty Marty making a musical, what is he going to bring to the table? And here's what I'm hoping just for a straight up musical, right?
Sure.
I want a musical in the grand edition. What do you want, Kev?
I want to see, because the guy loves movies, clearly.
Mm-hmm.
And he loves old movies. Can he, but I don't necessarily want him to just don't just like remake an MGM musical. Just like with Cape Fear, bring your own little kind of stuff to it, and let's see what we got. Now, this is also, what's interesting is Cape Fear is very seasoned Martin Scorsese. This is kind of still pretty raw Martin Scorsese. He's got Mean Streets and Taxi Driver under his belt. This is actually his movie right after Taxi Driver. So it's kind of his first big production. So I'm curious to see what he does with it. So yeah, let's they do seem like two styles that aren't going to fit together, like peanut butter and pickles. Mm-hmm. But you know, maybe that'll work.
I hope so. I earlier made it pretty clear I'm not really familiar with Liza Minnelli. I think I only really know her because she used to hang out with Michael Jackson.
Yes, they were friends.
That's how I know her.
Yep.
So she apparently, according to you, has had a long and diverse career from Bob Fosse musicals to a regular role in Arrested Development. She's still plugging away, huh?
Yep, she is still alive. Was in the most recent Arrested Development season 4 they did for Netflix.
That everyone hated.
I thought it was great.
Oh, good, good.
But yeah, she is still doing it. She's still out there. So just a little older and a little wiser. I think Arrested Development was definitely my introduction to her. And she's in more than a regular role on that show. She's like one of the main... She kind of comes in as a guest spot, but then becomes a very integral character into the story. But then I saw Bob Fosse's Cabaret, and that's where I really saw, like, okay, she's both a great singer, but she can, like, act the shit out of a scene if she needs to. So it's, you know, she's an interesting person. Kind of eccentric, kind of wild, but, you know, someone who is just, with eyes like that and a face like that, is made to be a star. She's made for the pictures. Yeah, that's Liza Minnelli.
Fair enough. So then I look forward to her killing it in this movie. We've kind of talked about our expectations. 162 minutes. It bears repeating. So,
yes. We're breaking this one up into chunks.
Here. Is there anything else?
Nope, let's do it.
Let's get into this. Here we go. And we're back. Kev, we're back. I watched this on Blu-ray. Kev, how'd you watch this? Was it on Blu-ray? No, wait. I didn't watch this. Wait, did I watch it on Blu-ray? It couldn't have been, because I don't think there was one. Let's just say I watched it on disc.
I watched the DVD from Netflix. Had a short wait on it, though. Not a lot of copies of that floating around out there.
I got it from the library, but I don't remember. It must have been a DVD, because we did our research and we couldn't find a Blu-ray.
I couldn't find one online anywhere. So.
It doesn't really matter. I don't think so.
There might be like a Region 2 with Portuguese subtitles one. Who knows?
No Portuguese subtitles for me. Don't like them. Kev, it's our last Scorsese movie.
Yes.
Would you like to give me your thoughts on this movie?
I want to love it so bad. I want to. But I don't know why I don't.
Oh, I know why you don't.
Why don't I?
Because this is not a good movie. There are things to like about... Here's the problem. And this is true of a lot of Scorsese. There are things to like. There are scenes to like. There are characters to enjoy. There are things that are good. But as he likes to do, there's no spine in this movie. It's just a big, squishy mess. It is a jellyfish of a movie. You know what I mean? And it's very, very uneven.
Yes.
The first 2 hours and 10 minutes are meandering. The first 2 hours and 10 minutes remaining. And the last 30 minutes, Fine Success, livens it up, is a musical. But by the way, this is not a musical.
This is not a musical.
There are musical numbers in this movie.
There are scenes of people playing music. It is not a musical. So that has been a gross incorrect notion throughout history of this is Martin Scorsese's musical.
No.
Nobody breaks out into song and dance. There are no
when they
songs that tell the story in a way that would happen in a musical.
But there are scenes like that in the end of the movie, presumably when these people woke up and were like, oh, look, a musical. But that's literally someone watching a musical.
Yeah, it's a staged musical that Liza Minnelli's character stars in.
Yes.
And it's musical scenes. And then she has her house-bringing down rendition of New York, New York, and then the movie ends. Yeah.
It's tough because there's so much competence and incompetence mixed that you don't know how to take it, right?
It's a big old blob of rice.
Overcooked rice.
Overcooked rice.
So there's good technical elements. The acting, again, is good.
Yep.
The cinematography is good. The characters are not likable, though. Okay, that could be a choice.
I think it's a fundamental issue from the beginning because De Niro's trying to hit on Liza Minnelli, and it's not in like a charming way. It's kind of in like the dude just feels like a creeper.
And in that scene, he tries to talk to her 6 times, and it's like, this is insufferable.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Stop it. And then they get together, and you're like, well, god damn it, you did such a great job making me hate this dude.
Yeah, but now they're together, having apparently a fruitful relationship, but you just don't buy it because while De Niro is great at being a creeper and kind of playing this scuzzier dude, it doesn't work for that scene, though. But you buy Liza Minnelli being annoyed, but not annoyed enough at this completely persistent goofball who's wearing a Hawaiian shirt at a nice place.
New York.
And it was VJ Day. Everybody was just doing whatever they wanted. So
the lack of structure makes the story have a plastic aftertaste that...
Plastic aftertaste. I like that.
It's kind of like...
I'm not saying I like a plastic aftertaste.
But you like what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And and here's why. I'm gonna say this. It's gonna sound outrageous. I'm gonna back it up. Why? There's an element of student work or like laissez-faire art house to this, right?
Absolutely.
Like when you go to like an art installation and there's like the guys made videos, but they feel like really bobo.
Yeah.
And the reason why it's because without a plot, it feels amateur because nothing adds up, right? It's just scene after scene after scene. It's not like, and I think the reason why I could say this is because we watched Cape Fear and you see how the piano wire goes missing in the beginning and at the end he uses it to kill some guy, right? And there's a million little things like that. And here, I'm sure there's some stuff like this, but it just doesn't feel, it just feels like every scene is its own movie.
Yeah. It's a lot of little scenes kind of strung together. And if that's what you're doing, that's what you're doing, and that's fine. But it doesn't make for the most compelling watch. And I agree it very much fits into the style of this era. In the middle of the 70s, when it was all just anybody with a movie camera could be an auteur. Mm-hmm. They were just making these like gritty art house pieces because that's what was real, man. Because we're in Nam right now, and that's what we want. We want just real gritty because everything else is bullshit, man. Mm-hmm. But it's like the culmination of... But then you're trying to ape MGM musicals, which are the quintessential, like, this is just the crowd-pleasing thing. Which, those movies can be kind of formless, too, but at least you're watching a rousing musical, And it's two weird styles. It is peanut butter and pickles with some Tabasco sauce on it. It just... It's a lot of flavors that don't fit.
Yeah, and on this competence, incompetence things, there's things that the movie does well at times and other times doesn't. The lip sync at sometimes is really good, and other times it's like Liza Minnelli is like belting out something, but her mouth is almost closed, as if it's like a lower, like less belty thing, and it's just like, this sucks.
Yeah, there's some amateur hour stuff.
Amateur hour indeed.
And yet you get these great shots of like when De Niro's being dragged out of a club and it's this tunnel of light bulbs.
That's a great shot. That's a great shot.
Give me forget the gritty kind of like, this is the real world, man, shit. Give me that MGM musical stuff, but break a few light bulbs.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you can play in that genre and do something interesting. But yeah, if you want to do the gritty stuff, it's like, let's fuck this thing up a little bit. Let's throw a rock at it, but in a loving way. But yeah, it's like there's those, you know, the shot of them like in the woods, and it's clearly like a fake woods, but that's kind of the idea,
right? Exactly. Yes, exactly. And you're like, oh, cool. That is a cool thing. Yeah. But have them sing a love song to each other.
Exactly. I don't need scenes of them in the back of a cab. That's not interesting. Mm-hmm. Let's go there. You know, let's do that part.
And it has to be said, Kev, because it has to be said. Overall, this movie's boring. There's a lot of boring scenes. It is
scenes that just don't really go anywhere, and that makes the good stuff that much more frustrating. Because yeah, there's scenes that just you can really feel the rambling improv dialogue that you've seen in many student films where people are like, oh, I just want my actors to like improv and find the scene, man. Which you can do if you have absolutely fantastic actors, but if they don't get anything, you don't use that scene. You know?
Right.
But they use that scene when they don't get anything.
Right. And so it's just, in some ways, I feel like some of that's intentional. Like, it's intentional that when you meet De Niro, he's a dick, and then as she falls in love with him, he's less of a dick, and then as they fall out of love, he's more of a dick. It just doesn't add up. And I don't know what can be done to have improved that, but it doesn't add up.
And I think part of it too is, as good an actress as Liza Minnelli is, I don't think she's up to the chops of bouncing off of De Niro.
I do feel like she
holds where you got to improv a lot, you know.
I do feel like she holds her own. I didn't feel like I was distracted by her acting. I enjoyed her in this movie. You know, I was like, oh, Liza Minnelli, she's good.
I think them together, it's two very different styles. It's almost a little metaphor for this movie. Very old school, very gritty, bouncing off each other. They don't quite have that natural rapport that like De Niro and Joe Pesci have in Casino. You know, where it's like, you know, I said in that podcast, I could watch them play fight all day.
Yeah.
And I absolutely could.
But I also think that because when they're play fighting, it's fun. It's funny. There's a silliness to it where he's like, I feel like you don't want to, in Casino's like, I feel like you don't want to get with us. He's like, I do not want to get with you. I'm doing my thing here. And every time my name comes to the paper, your name comes to the paper. So to answer your question, I do not want to be able to. And he's like, I can't be over here and over here. I can't be over here and over here. You motherfucker. Whereas in this, it's like their conversations are like, and here's another problem. She's right and he's wrong. Always. In this movie. She's never wrong about anything and he's always wrong about everything. He's a dick. He's a brute. He's an asshole. And there's no flaws in her. I mean, you know, so she gets frustrated at times and things, but she's not like, I don't know.
Bad person.
Yeah, he's like a bad person. He's like, you know, don't ever interrupt me when I control my band. You know what I mean? It's like, go fuck yourself, dude.
Yeah, he kind of is like one step below Jake LaMotta.
Yes.
And 4 steps below Max Cady. but
at least Max Cady knows what he is. You know what I mean?
But yeah, it's just, this guy's just not, you know, again, you have to believe that he could be charming in some capacity, and he just isn't. Like, who would fall for this guy?
Not me.
Not me. I'm straight as a $5 bill.
Wow. Is that straight? I mean, a $5 bill is pretty flexible, homie. I mean,
that's true.
What are we talking about?
It's real. It's tangible.
Anyways.
Never you say you're queer as a $7 bill, because a $7 bill doesn't exist.
Okay. I get
straight as a $5 bill. Everybody knows what a $5 bill is. Get your gay metaphors straight.
Listen, I just don't have the strength for it.
Attaboy.
It's kind of a nitpick, but it's kind of not a nitpick. And I don't know if this is Scorsese's fault or if this is just, you know, preservation or whatever. There's some shots in this movie that are very, very crystal clear, and there are some shots in the movie that are grainy to the point of distraction.
Yep. I have a feeling that's probably a film archive type thing. When this movie bombed, they probably didn't like...
They stuck it in the vault and said, fuck you.
Throw all the prints in the vault, you know. Whereas Rocky, it's like, oh shit, we gotta like preserve something because theaters keep ordering this thing. We gotta keep something real. So.
And I will say that there are, especially in that last 30 minutes, there's some, you said this earlier, but it bears repeating, there's some really great musical numbers. Liza Minnelli just singing, and there's a really great Marty, Pure Cinema, where she's in the studio, They do the take. The lights go down. The lights come up, and as she's singing, the lights are dynamic. In a recording booth is just a glass booth. You know what I mean? There's no need for any of that shit. But it's kind of cool, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can create a cinema world where that would actually happen. So, and you're not trying to hide it. It's not like, oh, the janitor moved a light and oh, now she's in the spotlight.
Yeah.
There's a spotlight on her now.
And I do think the overall stylishness, it's a seed of something great. You know, like the background, it's clearly just paintings and wood cutouts that are painted black. That's all cool, but it needed just to be more and more and more of that, you know. And it really, they gave you a taste of it, but it's just not that good. Is there any cool, like little cool things that we want to point out?
I said the light bulb tunnel is great. I can't say enough about her performance at the end. That is a showstopper.
It is
New York.
It is. The opening when he's walking and then the neon sign is pointing at him.
Yep.
I'm like, oh, cool. But then we go into a 45 minutes of him being an asshole trying to pick her up, and it's like, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, playing the saxophone with just one light on him, it's like that's cinema right there. So
yeah.
Where is that movie?
Right.
You know?
Where's this movie? I'm lost. Have a heart on the. I'm lost on one side. Have a heart on the reverse. Yep. That's funny. Mm-hmm. Also, he's dressed like like those Tex Avery cartoons with the wolf that's like lusty.
Yeah.
He's dressed like that lusty wolf. That is like a green suit jacket with like brown pants, you know? Oh, God. Yep. That whole thing.
Absolutely. I love the background musicians through most of this movie. They feel like real, actual, like just kind of session guys working. Specifically, the obese drummer with a cigarette hanging out of his mouth, just like rocking a beat like it's the easiest thing in the world. That's a very unsung thing of the music world. It's just those session guys who can just crank it out and do it like pros, you know. So I like those guys were depicted, I felt, very realistically and very well. Let's make a movie about them, well, you know.
Yeah. Well, that's your remake idea, but So, I mean, in the beginning, in the first half, it said that some people say this is a masterpiece while others deride it. I can't imagine this being a masterpiece.
I mean, there's people online that are just like, no, you just wait here. This is where you really see, I want to say the Scorsese fanboys just coming out of the woodwork, you know, where they want to hold everything up to this high regard because he has made great movies. So everything must be great, right? And those people try and elevate these and find these things that necessarily aren't there. Mm-hmm. And it's okay to kind of let your heroes fall a little bit. To let them make mistakes. Because those lead to other things.
Right.
But yeah, it's, you really get, for some reason with Scorsese, these guys put the blinders on and just won't acknowledge any fault in it. Mm-hmm. It's like, you know what, and there's good stuff in this movie. There's a masterpiece.
There's more
somewhere,
right?
Or it could have been made from this story, but it ain't here.
But it's not a needle in a haystack. It's a wheat in the chaff pile.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I think his movies are consistently polarizing because they are polarizing, and I think without plot to engage the audience, you really need people to connect to this, and if they can't, there's no assistance of the plot assists people in connection. That's why plots are there. You know what I mean? And I'm not against having amorphous blob movies. I know I like a jellyfish so much as the next guy, but if it's not relatable, you're fucked.
Exactly. It's there if there's people rag on 3-act structure, but it's the thing that we can immediately latch on to. And if you don't give it, then you better give us something else. And, that's a tightrope you gotta walk. A lot of people latch on to Goodfellas just because it's a well-made movie, the characters are charming, it's a good violent gangster movie, but it has a lot of comedy and things in it. What they don't necessarily latch on to is something like Last Temptation of Christ, like Silence, like, Kundun. This movie, it's, you're going in there without a map, and if your average Joe isn't doing what you're preaching, then it's going to be really tough to bring people along.
I agree with you, and I think something like Casino and Goodfellas have sex, violence, and the information about how the mafia works presented in an interesting way, and I think you can connect to those things, right?
It has populist things that your average person would be interested in, and even if there's no quote-unquote plot, you roll along with it just because it is an interesting story.
Indeed. So to go back to this movie really quick, do I like this movie and does it work? The answer is nope.
No, and I agree. I really don't think it works, but it could, and that's what's so frustrating about it. There's so many things in it that are like, that's the movie I want.
Right.
And it's just not all there.
And I mean, that's the thing. So if you have a sequel, pitch, or remake idea, it's make a musical. Make a musical about mobsters that is a actual, there's a movie like this, but
Musical Mobsters.
Sinatra and
Guys and Dolls? Is that what you're thinking of?
That was Sinatra and
Sinatra's in it.
And who's that other guy? Marlon Brando?
Yeah. Brando's in it.
Yeah, Guys and Dolls. Okay. So make a grittier version of Guys and Dolls. Perfect!
There it is. But throw in some of those MGM musical movie touches. Doesn't have to be a stage musical. Get those, like, the Judy Garland musicals, your Doris Days. Like, get those elements in there, but tell a grittier story. You can do it. It's possible. I have a feeling it's out there, and it could be in this movie, but it's just not, and that's what's so frustrating about it.
So, Kev, we watched 8 different Scorsese films. Now that we've wrapped up our talk on New York, like, what is your assessment of his career? How do you feel about Scorsese's work? I think he's a very personal filmmaker, somewhere between Tarantino and David Lynch, right? Tarantino is this crowd-pleasing, very heavily plotted, very heavily charactered, very heavily genred person, right? So much so that even if you're not familiar with his genre, you're familiar enough of it so that his pastiche becomes something that you could connect to.
He makes violent movies, right?
He does. And then you got someone like Lynch, who doesn't give a fuck about anything, it seems, right? And so his movies are very dense, very hard to keep up with. Like, I kind of get Mulholland Drive, Lost Highway.
Oh, yeah.
Your guess is as good as mine.
Lynch to me is, Mulholland Drive, I think, is the perfect distillation of his. He can tell a more popular story, but it's completely a David Lynch story too. Mm-hmm. And his movies usually fall on one or the other. So you got like The Elephant Man, which is much more straightforward. Right,
Blue Velvet.
But then you get your Lost Highways and your Inland Empires, and it's like, oh boy.
Right.
We're in a very dark place right now.
Right. So, I think he's closer to Tarantino than Lynch, but he's definitely in the middle.
He is, watching all of these kind of back to back, I see he is much more of an experimental filmmaker than people give him credit for. He is not afraid to try anything.
I guess the big question here is, does he not care about plot, or does he not understand plot?
We know he understands the plot. The guy made Cape Fear.
Yeah.
The guy, Mean Streets is also a pretty straightforward movie, for the most part. And, and he started out making, like, these Roger Corman type movies.
Boxcar Bertha.
So the guy gets plot. But for him, the stories he wants to tell, they're just a little more amorphous and a little more in that personal sense of he has a lot of things he wants to explore, and if this is the last thing I do, I'm going to put it in here. And I think that is his style, for better or worse. So you always know when you're watching one of his movies. And that's one thing we can say about any of these, whether you liked it, didn't like it, you always know it was one of his. I think.
I agree with that. I just think that he's much more of a personal filmmaker than people give him credit for. I think his fanboys, who are, to his credit and to their credit, connected to his credit and their discredit, they are connected to his work, but they don't understand how other people couldn't be. And that's the problem, is that it's like, this is not going to connect with everyone. And you just kind of have to be mature enough to get that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's, and again, when a guy has made so many great pieces, you want to just see there's those little nuggets of genius everywhere, and it's tough to acknowledge just an outright movie that doesn't work, but he has them in there. But it's to no detriment of his great work. I think it doesn't take. Goodfellas is not a lesser work because Last Temptation of Christ we didn't really connect to it. It doesn't lessen my feelings of Goodfellas, and vice versa. Just because Casino's great doesn't mean I'm going to give a pass to New York, New York.
Right.
And some people just don't. They don't really operate that way, and it's okay. Martin Scorsese's a human. He's a guy.
But,
he's got to watch Elmo videos with his daughter,
But
which he talks about on Conan, and it's funny.
Very good. And the problem is that, again, you get into this genius narrative, right? Where genius is a state of mind, not a achievement. And so it's like, well, it has to be good. It's Scorsese. It's like, I like Tarantino, but I didn't like Jackie Brown, I didn't hate Jackie Brown, but it's not as good as all of his other stuff. It's tough. Like, how can someone like John Carpenter make something that is so perfect like The Thing, and so perfect like Halloween, and so perfect like all the other good shit that he made, and then make something that is just good like Christine, and make something that is very bad like Ghost of Mars, right? And that's the thing is that I love fandom, and I love celebrating someone for the best of what they can do, but within reason, right? You could say I love Scorsese. I love Cape Fear, I love Goodfellas, I love Christina, right? And if someone says, what about, New York, New York? It's like, well, you swing and you miss sometimes. You know what I mean? And I think it's what you just said. It's like, you have to acknowledge you don't have to dwell on the failures, but you have to acknowledge they exist, right?
And then he's a filmmaker that the guy just wants to work and keeps going. He can't sit on his hands and just ride a success for a bit until he is inspired to do his next movie. He's got stories to tell and he wants to do it. And when you're in that mode, it's kind of like Sidney Lumet. The guy made 50 movies over his career. Some of his movies are fantastic masterpieces. Some are just okay. Some are bad. Some are The Wiz. But, they're all there. And that's when you're really looking at a body of work, it's just like looking back at somebody's life. A perfect body of work, kind of boring.
I mean, it's tough because not even in what would be a perfect body of work, you know what I mean?
You could almost argue Stanley Kubrick, but even then...
I mean, listen, we appreciate 2001...
That guy made 16 movies in 60 years, or something like that. 16 movies in 40 or 50 years.
And also, we like 2001: A Space Odyssey. That's a dense, divisive movie, right? Like, I appreciate it for what it was. I would never just turn that movie on and just, No.
The best way to experience that to me was seeing it in 70mm at the Arrow Theater. That's how you consume 2001: Space Odyssey. You don't just put it on Saturday after football and watch 2001. It's like that's a big fat dinosaur-sized steak you gotta chew on.
Right. So I think what we're trying to say is we're glad that he goes for it. I do wish that he kind of, and again, I wish that he had. And I'm going to say this, quote, learn from his mistakes. But to him, it might not be mistakes. He's like, I don't care about plot. Fuck it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think David...
he openly acknowledges.
Right. Just like David... I don't think David Lynch thinks, man, I bet my shit confused people. He doesn't care. It's his shit. And that's fine. It's fine.
And you can... And and if you don't like it or you don't agree with it, you didn't like Raging Bull. I think it's one of the 10 greatest movies ever. That's fine.
Yeah. It is what it is.
And, we're still going to go get lunch after this.
Oh, God, I can't wait.
But I'm going to think about it. He didn't like Raging Bull. So I think this movie was kind of the perfect one to end on, in a way. Because we get that push-pull of there's so much good stuff and things we like, but it kind of comes with the bad every now and then, too. But it's okay that, the guy's so prolific that you're going to swing and miss sometimes.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, Scorsese, that's where he was. So next time we do this, who are we going to do Director's Buffet on next time? Catherine Bigelow is a name that
I think that's an interesting one.
It's an interesting one.
Who do you want?
Well, the thing is, I would like a little bit more diversity. So I'm like, what about a Spike Lee who made a lot of movies? But I'm like, I don't know if I want to sit through all of Spike Lee's movies.
There's a lot of his I haven't seen too. So.
Yeah. It's like if we're doing fun shit, it's tough. It's gonna. Catherine Bigelow's a good one. I think
we've basically done John Carpenter. We've done all of his great
movies. Yeah, it's tough. I think that the key is doing someone who's done a lot of different shit.
For sure.
But, who's out there that really gets that privilege? I don't know.
It's tough. So, but yeah, this was a big one. I'm glad you came on the journey.
Yeah, indeed.
Of course. I mean, obviously, we do this podcast together.
Mm-hmm.
But, You probably watched some films that you maybe necessarily wouldn't in your normal time.
I don't think I had seen any of these.
Hey, you hadn't, had you?
No.
Wow.
No.
Impressive.
Yep.
So I'm surprised you've never seen Goodfellas.
I think that was some of it on TV.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that movie is. I'm confusing it with. There's a movie I saw where I thought it was De Niro. Maybe it's not De Niro. Where they're in charge of something in Vegas, and then in the end they whack him, and they actually kill him. I don't know what movie that is though. No, we'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. So.
That's it for us. This episode written by Kev. Kev, thanks for writing all of these this season. I love it when you write them.
It was a joy, actually. You know, as someone who does love Scorsese and his work, clearly as I've stated over 8 episodes, you know, just kind of getting to really dig into these movies and learn about the history about them and all that. That was just pure joy for me. So it was a pleasure.
Music by Jeff Russell. I'm Mr. Jibber Jabber. That's Kev. We're gonna do some shorter movies coming up.
Just for the sake of everybody, do some shorter, easier to digest.
In the coming weeks, we're rapidly approaching our 2-year anniversary, our 100th episode.
Yowza.
So hopefully some special stuff will be in store for those. But yeah, we're just keeping it moving.
I'll book Liza Minnelli soon.
Call her people.
Yep.
All right. Goodbye, everybody. See you next time.